Hi, welcome to Ikate's Crossing as we continue our journey of the 10th insight. What card are we going to focus on today? 14. Okay, I think that's good. Yep, Kokopelli, the Demurg. Risk. Kokopelli is the young god of music and fertility. His flute, a phallic symbol, invokes and promotes fertility in both the fields and in the animal kingdom. As he plays his flute, snake or sexual energy wakens, and the natural forces of the world stir to life. Kokopelli's consort was also honored as the mother of the divine race. All children born with special talents are descended from her. We are reminded that whenever we step into our personal power or gifts, we are tapping into the powerful energy of Kokopelli. We can never be quite sure what the results will be or what energies will awaken, just that those results will unfold quickly. The message is about being courageous. Use your gifts. Do not shy away from risks, but engage life with your whole body, mind, heart, and spirit. So the key words are risk, initiating action, creation, ability, gifts, tapping into elemental power, immediate responses, and time is actually spring. So let's continue this journey. An inner hell. Okay. A chill surged through my body as I looked out on the grey environment. The ominous feeling I perceived earlier was turning into a clear sense of alienation and despair. Have you been here before? I asked Will. Only to the edge, he replied. Never out here in the middle. Do you feel how cold it is? I nodded as the movement caught my eye. What is that? Will shook his head. I'm not sure. A swirling mass of energy seemed to be moving in our direction. It must be another soul group, I said. As they came closer, I tried to focus on their thoughts, feeling an even greater sense of alienation, even anger. I tried to shake it off, open up more. Wait, I vaguely heard Will say. You're not strong enough, but it was too late. I was suddenly pulled into an intense blackness, and then beyond it into a large town of some kind. In terror, I looked around, struggling to keep my wits, and realized that the architecture indicated the 19th century. I was standing on a street corner full of people walking by, and in the distance was the raised dome of the Capitol building. At first, I thought I was actually in the 19th century, but several aspects of the reality were wrong. The horizon faded out to the strange grey colour, and the sky was olive green, similar to the sky above, the office construction that Williams had created when he was avoiding the realization that he had died. Then I became aware of 4 men watching me from the opposite street corner. An icy cold feeling swept my body. All were well dressed, and one cocked his head and took a puff from the large cigar. Another checked a watch and returned it to his vest pocket. Their look was sophisticated, but menacing. Anyone who has raised their ear is a friend of mine, a low voice spoke from behind me. I turned to see a large barrel-shaped man, also well dressed and wearing a wide-brimmed felt hat, walking towards me. His face seemed familiar. I'd seen him before, but where? Don't mind them, he added. They're not so hard to outsmart. I stared at his tall, stooped posture and shifting eyes, then remembered who he was. He had been the commander of the federal troops I'd seen in the visions of the 19th century war, the one who had refused to see Maya and had ordered the battle against the native people to begin. This town was a construction, I thought. He must have recreated his later life situation in order to avoid realizing he was dead. This is not real, I blurted. You're deceased. He seemed to ignore my statement. So what have you done to piss off that bunch of jackals? I haven't done anything. Oh, yes, you've done something. I know that look they're giving you. They think they run this town, you know. In fact, they think they can run the whole world. He shook his head. These people never trust fate. They think they're responsible for seeing that the future turns out exactly as they plan. Everything. Economic development, governments, the flow of money, even the relative value of world currencies. All of which is not a bad idea. Really. God knows the world is full of peons and idiots who will ruin everything if left to their own devices. The people have to be herded and controlled as much as possible, and if one can make a little money along the way, why not? But these nuts try to run me. Of course I'm too smart for them. I've always been too smart for them. So what did you do? Listen, I said. Try to understand. None of this is real. Hey, he replied, I would suggest that you take me into your confidence. If they're against you, I'm the only friend you have. I looked away, but I could tell he was still eyeing me suspiciously. The treacherous people, he went on. They'll never forgive you. Take my situation, for example. All they wanted was to use my military experience to quash the Indians and open up their lands, but I was on to them. I knew they couldn't be trusted, that I would have to look out for myself. He gave me a wry look. It's harder for them to use you and throw you away if you're a war hero, right? After the war, I sold myself to the public. That way, these characters had to play ball with me. But let me tell you, never underestimate these people. They're capable of anything. He backed away from me as a moment as if pondering my appearance. In fact, he added, they may have sent you as a spy. At a loss what to do, I started to walk away. You bastard, he yelled. I was right. I saw him reach into a pocket and pull a short knife. Petrified, I forced my body to move, running down the street and into an alleyway, his footsteps heavy behind me. On the right was a door partially open. I ran through it and slid the bolt into the locked position. My next breath drew in the heavy odour of opium. Around me were dozens of people, their faces staring absently up at me. Were they real, I wondered, or part of the constructed illusion? Most quickly turned back to their muted conversation and hookah pipes, so I started to walk through the dirty mattresses and sofas to another door. I know you, a woman slurred. She was leaning against the wall by the door, her head hanging forward as if too heavy for her neck. I went to your school. I looked at her in confusion for a moment, then remembered the young girl in my high school who had suffered from repeated episodes of depression and drug use. Resisting all intervention, she had finally overdosed and died. Sharon, is that you? She managed to smile and I glanced back at the door, concerned that the knife-bearing commander might have found a way inside. It's okay, she said. You can stay here with us. You'll be safe in this room. Nothing can hurt you. I walked a step closer as gently as possible. I don't want to stay. All this is an illusion. As I said that, 3 or 4 people turned and looked at me angrily. Please, Sharon, I whispered. Just come with me. 2 of the closest stood up and walked over beside Sharon. Get out of here, one told me. Leave her alone. Don't listen to him, the other said to Sharon. He's crazy. We need each other. I stooped slightly so I could look directly into Sharon's eyes. Sharon, none of this is real. You're dead. We have to find a way out of here. Shut up, another person screamed. 4 or 5 more people walked towards me, hate in their eyes. Leave us alone. I began to back towards the door. The crowd moved towards me. Through the bodies I could see Sharon turning back to her hookah hose. I turned and ran through the door, only to realize that I wasn't outside. I was in an office of some kind, surrounded by computers, filing cabinets, a conference table, modern 20th century furniture and equipment. Hey, you're not supposed to be in here, someone said. I turned round to see a middle-aged man looking at me over his reading glasses. Where's my secretary? I don't have time for this. What do you want? Someone's chasing me. I was trying to hide. Good God, man, then don't come in here. I said I don't have time for this. You haven't the slightest idea what I have to do today. Look at these case files. Who do you think will process them if I don't? I thought I saw a look of terror in his face. I shook my head and looked for another door. Don't you know you're dead? I asked. This is all imagined. He paused, the look of terror shifting to anger, then asked, How did you get in here? Are you a criminal? I found a door that led outside and ran out. The streets were now completely empty except for one carriage. It pulled up to the hotel across from me, and a beautiful woman, dressed in evening attire, got out and glanced over towards me, then smiled. There was something warm and caring about her demeanour. I dashed across the street towards her, and she paused to watch me approach, her smile coy and inviting. You're alone, she said. Why don't you join me? Where are you going? I asked tentatively. To a party. Who's going to be there? I have no idea. She opened the door to the hotel and motioned for me to come with her. I followed aimlessly, trying to think of what to do. We walked into the elevator and she pushed the button for the 4th floor. As we rode up, the sensation of warmth and caring increased with each floor. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her staring at my hands. When I looked, she smiled again and pretended to have been caught. The elevator opened and she led me down the hall to a particular door and knocked twice. After a moment, the door was unlocked and a man opened it. His face lit up at the sight of the woman. "Come in," he said. "Come in." She invited me to enter ahead of her, and as I walked in, a young woman reached over and took my arm. She was dressed in a strapless gown and was barefooted. "Oh, you're lost," she said. "Poor thing. You'll be safe in here with us." Past the door, I could see a man without a shirt. "Look at those thighs," he commented, staring at me. "He has perfect hands," another said. In a state of shock, I realized the room was crowded with people in various stages of nudity and lovemaking. "No, wait," I said. "I can't stay." The woman on my arm said, "You would go back out there? Takes forever to find a group like this. Feel the energy in here. Not like the fear of being alone, huh?" She moved her hand across my chest. Suddenly there was a sound of a scuffle on the other side of the room. "No! Leave me alone!" someone shouted. "I don't want to be here." A young man, no older than 18, pushed several people away and ran out the door. I used the distraction to run out behind him. Not waiting for the elevator, he bounded down the adjacent stairs, and I followed. When I reached the street, he was already on the other side. I was about to shout for him to stop when I saw him freeze in terror. Ahead on the sidewalk was the commander, still holding the knife, but this time facing the group of men who had watched me earlier. They were all talking at the same time, posturing angrily. Abruptly, one of the group pulled a gun, and the commander rushed towards him with the knife. Shots rang out, and the commander's hat and knife flew backward as the bullet pierced his forehead. He dropped to the ground with a thud, and as he did, the other men stopped in mid-motion and began to fade away until they disappeared completely. Just as quickly, the man on the ground also disappeared. Across from me, the young man sat wearily down on the curb and put his head in his hands. I rushed up to him, my knees shaking. "It's okay," I said. "They're gone." "No, they're not," he said in frustration. "Look over there." I turned and saw the four men who had disappeared standing across the street in front of the hotel. Unbelievable! They were in the exact position they'd been when I first seen them. One puffed a cigar, and the other checked his watch. My heart skipped a beat as I also spotted the commander standing across from them again, staring menacingly. "This keeps happening over and over," the young man said. "I can't stand this anymore. Someone's got to help me." Before I could say anything, two forms materialized to his right, but remained obscured, out of focus. The young man stared at the forms for a long time, then with a look of excitement on his face said, "Roy, is that you?" As I watched the two forms move towards him until he was completely hidden by their weaving shapes. After several minutes he completely disappeared along with the two souls. I stared at the empty curb where he had been sitting, feeling remnants of a higher vibration. In my mind's eye, I saw my soul group again and felt their deep caring and love. Concentrating on the feeling, I was able to shake off the blanketing anxiety and to amplify my energy in increments until finally I began to open up inside. Immediately, the environment shifted to lighter shades of grey, and the town disappeared. As my energy increased, I was able to imagine Will's face, and instantly he was beside me. "Are you okay?" he asked, turning to embrace me. His expression showed immense relief. "Those illusions were strong, and you willed yourself right into them. You know, I couldn't remember what to do. You were gone a long time. All we could do was send you energy." "Who do you mean by we?" "All these souls." Will's hand gestured outwardly. When I looked fully, I could see hundreds of souls stretching as far as I could see. Some were looking directly at us, but most appeared to be focused in another direction. I looked to see where they were staring, following their gaze to several large swirls of energy far in the distance. When I concentrated my focus, I realized that one of the swirls was in fact the town from which I had just escaped. "What are those places?" I asked Will. "Mental constructions," he replied, "set up by souls who in life lived very restrictive control dramas and could not wake up after death. Many thousands of them exist out there." "Were you able to see what was happening when I was in the construction?" "Most of it. When I focused on the souls nearby, I could pick up on their view of what was happening to you. This ring of souls is constantly beaming energy into the illusions, hoping someone will respond. Did you see the teenage boy? He was able to wake up, but the others didn't seem to pay attention to anything." Will turned to face me. "Do you remember what we saw during William's life review?" At first he couldn't accept what was happening, and he began to repress his death to the extent that he created a mental construction of his office. Yes, I thought of that when I was down there. Well, that's how it works for everyone. If we die, and we've been so immersed in our control drama and routine as a way to repress the mystery and insecurity of life to such a degree that we can't even wake up after death, then we create these illusions or trances so we can continue the same way of feeling safe, even after we enter the afterlife. If William's soul group had not reached him, he would have entered one of the hellish places where you were. It's all a reaction to fear. The people would be paralyzed with fear if they didn't find some way to ward it off, to repress it below consciousness. What they're doing is repeating the same dramas, the same coping devices they practiced in life, and they can't stop. So these illusion realities are just severe controlled dramas. Yes, they all fall within the general styles of the controlled dramas, except that they are more intense and non-reflective. For example, the man with the knife, the commander, was no doubt an intimidator in the way he stole energy from others, and he rationalized his behavior by assuming that the world was out to get him. And of course, in his life on Earth, those expectations drew just those kind of people into his life. So his mental vision was fulfilled. Here he just created imaginary people to be after him, so he could reproduce the same situation. If he were to run out of people to intimidate, and his energy were to fall, anxiety would begin to seep into consciousness again. So he has to keep up the intimidator role constantly. He has to keep this particular kind of action going, the action he learnt long ago, the only action he knows that will preoccupy his mind sufficiently to kill the fear. It is the action itself, the compulsive, dramatic, high adrenaline nature of the action, that pushes the anxiety so far into the background that he can't forget about it, repress it, and feel half at ease in its existence, at least for a while. What about the drug users? I asked. In this case, they were taking passivity, the poor me, to the extreme of projecting nothing but despair and cruelty on the entire world, rationalizing a need to escape. Obsessively pursuing drugs still serves the function of preoccupying the mind and repressing anxiety even in the afterlife. Even in the physical dimension, drugs often produce an euphoria quite like the euphoria that comes from love. The problem with this false euphoria, however, is the body resists the chemicals and counteracts them, which means that as the drug is repeatedly used, it takes an increasingly larger dose to reach the same effect, which eventually destroys the body. I thought of the commander again. Something really strange happened down there. The man who was chasing me was killed, and then he seemed to come back to life and start the drama all over again. That's how it works in this self-imposed hell. All these illusions always play out and blow up in the end. If you'd been with someone who had repressed the mystery of life by eating great amounts of fat, a heart attack might have ended it. The drug users eventually destroy their own bodies. The commander dies over and over, and so on. And it works the same way in the physical dimension. A compulsive controlled drama always fails sooner or later. Usually it happens during the trials and challenges of life. Routines break down and anxiety rushes in. It's what's called hitting bottom. This is the time to wake up and handle the fear in another way. But if a person can't, then he or she goes right back into the trance. And if one doesn't wake up in the physical dimension, one might have difficulty waking up in the other as well. These compulsive trances account for all the horrible behavior in the physical dimension. This is the psychology of all truly evil acts, the motivation behind the inconceivable behavior of child molesters, sadists, and serial monsters of all kinds. They're simply repeating the only behavior they know that will numb the mind and keep away the anxiety that comes from the lostness they feel. So you're saying, I interjected, that there is no organized conspirational evil in the world, no satanic plot to which we fall prey? None. There is only human fear and the bizarre ways that humans try to ward it off. What about the many references in sacred texts and scriptures to Satan? This idea is a metaphor, a symbolic way of warning people to look to the divine for security, not to their sometimes tragic ego, urges, and habits. Blaming on outside force for everything bad was perhaps important at a certain stage in human development, but now it obscures the truth, because blaming our behavior on forces outside ourselves is a way of avoiding responsibility, and we tend to use the idea of Satan to project that some people are inherently evil, so we can dehumanize the ones we disagree with and write them off. It is time now to understand the true nature of human evil in a more sophisticated way than to deal with it. If there is no satanic plot, I said, then possession doesn't exist. That's not so, Will said emphatically. Psychological possession does exist, but it's not the result of conspiracy of evil. It's just energy dynamics. Fearful people want to control others. That's why certain groups try to pull you in and convince you to follow them and ask you to submit to their authority or fight if you try to leave. When I was first drawn into this illusory town, I thought I'd been possessed by some demonic force. No, you were drawn in because you made the same mistake you made earlier. You didn't just open up and listen to those souls. You gave yourself over to them as if they automatically had all the answers without checking to see if they were connected and motivated by love. And unlike the souls who are divinely connected, they didn't back away from you. They just pulled you into their world, the same way some crazy group or cult might do in the physical dimension if you don't discriminate. Will paused as if in thought, then continued. All this is more of the 10th insight, that's why we're seeing it. As communication between the two dimensions increases, we'll begin to have more encounters with souls in the afterlife. This part of the insight is that we must discern between these souls who are awake and connected with the spirit of love and those who are fearful and stuck in an obsessive trance of some kind. But we must do so without invalidating and dehumanizing those caught in such fear dramas by thinking they're demons or devils. They are souls in a growth process just like us. In fact, in the earth dimension, those who are now caught up in dramas from which they can't escape are often the very souls who were the most optimistic in their birth visions. I shook my head, not following his meaning. That is why, he continued, they chose to be born into such a drastic, fearful situation that necessitates such intense, crazy coping devices. You're talking about coming into abusive and dysfunctional families, that sort of situation. Yes, intense control dramas of all kind, whether they're violent or just perverse. And strange addictions come from environments where life is so abusive and dysfunctional and constrictive, and the level of fear is so great that they spawn the same rage and anger or perversion over and over, generation after generation. Individuals who are born into these situations choose to do so on purpose with clarity. Okay, that's it for the moment. Don't forget to check the links down below. Check the links on my channel. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you know when the next video will be uploaded. Take care, and blessed be.